Welcome to the Let's Talk Student Ministry podcast. My name is Noah Bello. I am the student pastor of Tesh Baptist Church.
And my name is Nikki Lee, and I'm a youth leader here at Tesh Baptist Church.
And this is our fourth episode. I feel like we're really starting to get the hang of things, trying to really get our footing on how this is going to work.
I noticed, be a little delulu about that.
Yeah, be a little delulu about it. Yeah, I noticed that our Instagram page is getting a lot more attention than it was, and so it's really cool to watch the media programs slowly progress and everything like that.
We're starting to do the right kind of captions, the right hashtags, the right content.
What I like about it is that the students are getting involved now. Yeah. We had Hannah do one. Isabella did a motivational Monday. Well, she's going to do one, but by the time this releases, she will have.
It will have been on there.
Right. And I like that we have students that are willing, but also interested in getting involved. I remember whenever we started the media program, there was a lot of frustration in the fact that it felt like it was just us doing it, and mainly the frustration was coming from Jonathan. And we had to say that hey, the way that the ministry works is you have to have something in order for people to want to do it.
Right.
Yeah. So if I guess this could count as advice for people that are listening, is that if you want your people, as in your church members, to get involved in something, you have to actually do the thing. And they have to see it being done before they want to do it.
Yeah, not everyone has the capability of creating something from scratch. Mm-hmm. And so it's always a lot easier to get people into ministry when they have the bones and the instructions.
Well, not to mention that people are not going to want to show up to nothing, and people are not going to want to volunteer to do nothing. If they're going to take their time out of their day to do something or to get involved, they have to actually have something to do. And even if you're the most amazing Christian churchgoer and you want to really help out and get involved, you're going to get disappointed if you show up and there's nothing to do and there's really no way to help.
Because you feel it can either make you feel useless, make you feel like you're wasting your time, but sometimes it makes you feel disconnected. If everybody's doing something but there's not anything for you to do, you're they don't want me to do anything.
I want to point out that you said A and then you said A, you were listing things off.
Did I?
They were both A. Yeah.
Well,
you've seen Home Alone 2?
Yes.
One of my favorite jokes from Home Alone 2 was towards the end, whenever one of the kids asked Buzz if he needs to be worried about Kevin being missing, and then he goes, well, I'll give you 3 reasons why I'm not worried about Kevin. A, this, 2, this, and D.
Didn't we have that conversation with Brother Reggie one day? I do that all the time where I'll be A, and then I'll be
on the
2.
one hand, and then you don't give it the other hand,
Yeah. But yeah, I do that a lot. But at least I say in sequence. Well, at least I didn't right there. But I usually go A and then 2.
But I guess to kind of rope us back into the topic, as I've shared before, I have been working on putting some energy and some structure into our Celebrate Recovery and into our young adults program. And whenever I was sitting down, really thinking about what I want this ministry to look like, these ministries to look like, I had to ask myself what led to the student ministry growing so much. And I would say that it is a mixture of what we are doing on the inside, as in the way we were handling and ministering to these students, but also the fact that we're actually outwardly going and doing stuff and people are seeing us.
Yeah.
If we were just having regular Wednesdays and Sunday services, but we weren't doing worship and going to YEC and doing mission work and doing all these fundraisers that we still make sure are enjoyable for the kids to show up to.
Participating in the larger corporate church services.
Which is why, when we had our most recent CR meeting and I talked about events that I want to do for the ministry, I talked about how, hey, I want to find ways that we can take our people from Celebrate Recovery, put them on a bus so we can go serve somewhere, or put us in front of the church as it is supposed to be anonymous, but put the people who are more willing to talk about their experience with CR, put them in front of the church so people can actually see them and they can actually see. Because here's how I'm thinking about it. If I am just getting into my faith or just getting involved in a church and I read a bulletin that shows you what ministries we have, there's a chance that I'm going to see it getting interested and wanting to show up.
Sure.
But if I have never been to church before and I have a bit of social anxiety, or maybe I just don't know how to get involved, I'm going to read it in the bulletin, but then be that's interesting, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Now, if that scenario plays out, and then there is an event that's being hosted by Celebrate Recovery, or we have worship that's being led by a young adult ministry, or we have a large group of young adults just showing up to something, then suddenly the ministry becomes real to the rest of the church, and people become interested in actually helping and getting involved.
I mean, there's stages in getting involved. You're usually an outsider, an observer, a participant. Like that's and so if we don't give them anything to observe, how can they participate?
Right. And so that's something that I've been really thinking about. I talked to Brother Andrew yesterday about ways that I can get our older students / young adults involved. And he said that there's like a senior adult luncheon that he's hosting in a few weeks. And
during the week.
Yeah, it's like a Thursday, which I know Thursday mornings would be hard for people. But he had said that if you want to, I can take a bunch of young adult age students and we can go and help out and serve food and everything. And that may sound small to some people, but the fact that we have a ministry that's going to be going and doing something is going to go a long ways.
Well, it's like our agape dinner where it's adults that come to the agape dinner, but it's the children that serve. We've done it before where like the kids did, they serve pancake breakfast, or our youth should serve our older generation. That's how you get intergenerational connection within the church.
Well, I think that all generations should serve all generations,
Well, sure.
Yeah.
But it's usually more so the older generation serving the younger generation.
Right. So we need to have like a connection. Reciprocity, equality. I don't know. I guess for those of you who don't know, the Agape Dinner is a fundraiser that we do. Probably my favorite fundraiser that we do, honestly, because it's a lot of fun. It is a dinner party that we put on in the church, and we make the church look as fancy as possible, tell people to dress up and everything, bring their wives or their husbands, boyfriends or girlfriends, show up.
It's a sweetheart dinner for Valentine's Day.
It's a sweetheart dinner. And we have a show we put on. We have, our team will do worship, but it's not going to be your regular worship song. It's going to be a lot more
intimate worship songs.
I always give a small message because I feel like if you're doing something something like this that people that have never been to the church before are going to be at, then you need to share the gospel, because I've always been a more mission-minded person. And we did a game show the last 2 years.
Yeah, we played the wedding game or the match.
I don't know. I don't remember what we called it. But
what is the name? I mean, my goodness.
Newlywed
game, but it's really not newlyweds. It's just wed game.
Well, just anyone that's in a relationship, honestly.
More like Squid Games.
But I mean, I don't know. This is September, and so it's too early to talk about.
So get your tickets for the Agape dinner.
Yeah, get your tickets to the Agape dinner in February. It's because of Valentine's Day. We still need to talk about what we're actually going to do as an event for that, but
later.
Yeah, not for today. We got a lot more things to talk about coming up soon. So Nikki, do you want to share what your thoughts are from this past week of ministry has been?
Yeah, so Tuesday, did we do anything on Monday? No. So Tuesday we had Celebrate Recovery, which was testimony night. I was honored to give testimony. I did realize that I had never given my testimony in a room full of mixed, well, I've given it into like a room full of like the younger girls or like women, but never men and women. And there are parts of my testimony that sometimes I feel like isn't made for all ears.
So that makes CR been the perfect place to share.
Yeah, it was a safe place to share, which was nice. I don't think as many times as I have told pieces of my story, I didn't expect to get emotional. I did. But really for me, that whole night, and we talked about it a lot in our groups, was, after 14 years, I look back and go, well, I feel like it's been a long time since I got sober. But really, it's all of the things that have happened since I got sober that God pulled me through. And so that was what was encouraging to me, even about my own story. But, so. And then after Tuesday, what did we do Tuesday? Anything about Celebrate Recovery?
Yeah, I thought it was really powerful. I've been sharing about this, that I'm really pleased with how well the ministry is going. We had a meeting beforehand that I was really happy about. And truthfully, I was a bit nervous because it felt like the first meeting where I didn't have anything prepared to show. I just had to talk through some stuff. And I find myself getting anxious, or maybe at least frustrated during meetings, especially committee meetings, because like I want to stay on point, because it's like my opinion has always been that if we can stay on point on a topic and we have a guided conversation, then we could cover a lot of ground and be productive in a short period of time. And so it was frustrating whenever like I'd bring up a point and then we'd talk about it and then they kept on talking, and it's like it feels like we're talking about the same stuff whenever like the meat of the point has not been to give ideas on what to do. It has been how do we act out the ideas that have already been given. You know?
Well, I think sometimes if you only stay on point and you don't allow for a little bit of shifting, you can miss some really powerful ideas or a vision for the ministry. And then people don't feel like they can participate if it's just like production and implementation.
Yeah.
So.
So
but I do know what you mean. Sometimes we can talk about one topic for a really long time.
Yeah, so I'm still learning how to find the balance there, because the stuff that they were sharing was really good. And the thing I was happy about after the meeting is the fact that we actually are like we made some productive decisions. We scheduled leadership training.
Got a budget.
We have a budget. We're going to be planning a budget now. We have somebody looking into
Billboards.
getting us a billboard for outreach. We started a conversation about planning a major ministry event. We decided to call a local nursing home to go and serve, like I was just talking about, getting involved. I feel like there's one more area. Sponsorship. We started sponsorship, which I know that...
And we did present the new leaders we wanted to add to the...
Right, and I know that on the one hand, you could say that we've been acting like sponsors the whole time anyways, but I really like the fact that we put a title on it so we can actually make a program and put some structure into it, you know?
Well, it's like, it's a different form of sponsorship. There's being a sponsor, so which is usually a one-on-one private thing, but we're also, which was a great idea, by the way, I'll tell you that. But it was a great idea to sponsor people who join Celebrate Recovery when they get involved and they're not quite ready for step study, or we're in the middle of step study, being able to guide them through until it's time for them to get into the deeper stuff.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great idea, which is a little bit different than being a sponsor. It's more like being a guide.
Yeah.
But it's the same accountability, and that's good. It's a good idea.
I appreciate that. One thing that I thought was interesting is that, as you shared a second ago, there was themes in your testimony that actually kind of lines up with some of the themes and everything else we did this week. And so you had mentioned about how one of the big themes in your testimony was that while the fact that you came to Christ and that he saved you from your destructive lifestyle was wonderful, but the true testimony you believed was in how you lived it out.
Yeah.
Right? And I noticed that on Wednesday and on Thursday, the discussions we had was all along the line of being consistent in your relationship with God. So, before we get into all that, I think we should just cover what we talked about on Wednesday and Thursday.
So Wednesday,
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Real Talk Tuesday, which led into Wednesday. So we had a situation where a couple of people had told me, like they do, they like to let us know when they don't like something our youth are doing. So Real Talk Tuesday was about respecting the church. We had just had a couple of things come up in the last week or so that brought it to our attention. We'd just done the Lord's Supper. And so I wanted to do a video about, a lot of times we teach youth, respect the churches and the people of the church, and you absolutely should. But what it means to respect this building and the services that we have and the things that we do to observe the Lord. And I feel like in ministry across the board, in a lot of churches, it's not about a building, it's about a relationship. And it's not about a building, but it is about the place where we come together and the place that was built by the generations before us. and respecting that. And so it was important to have that conversation with them, you know, how they participate in church, how they participate in invitation. Because, you know, even adults, if I'm not sad or needing to pray or praise, sometimes I get a little uninterested, and so I'm off in my own world. With kids, it's double that. So just getting them to pay attention and understand the importance of what they're doing. So that was what Let's Talk About It was about.
Yeah, and you know, I was going to talk about the youth lesson, but you said something that kind of reminded me of what I thought was interesting, what was cool about last night as well. You talked about how it may be about a relationship with God, but we still have to respect the church. And last night, one of the main themes we talked about was about, last night for young adults, we talked about living out God's command in our life, which God's two greatest commands is to love God and love others. And we shared about how our number one priority must be God and our relationship with Him. But if you truly have a loving relationship with God, then from that is going to come your respect for God's stuff, like His church, His people. You know, I talked about how our ability to love comes from an outpouring of God's love that He gives to us, which is why His love is unconditional, which I'm going to share about that more, but I want to get into the youth lesson real quick.
I did think it was funny on Wednesday night when I was like, are you going to cover the Lord's Supper tonight? And you didn't say anything. And then you should have probably said, yeah. I don't think that I covered it the way I was covering the important. I think I just I wanted to bring up the importance of it. That we don't take cranberry juice like shooters. That blew my mind, tossing crackers around.
I think that they were throwing back the grape juice is weird.
Or smelling it.
Yeah.
Like, that was about respecting the what we were doing.
I asked the student that I was told was tossing the crackers or the bread, and he said, I wasn't tossing them, I was kind of like passing them from one hand to the other. And I said, so tossing. And he goes, but it wasn't going high. And then I said, well, whenever an adult looks at you and sees you doing that, like it's a baseball, they're going to call it tossing. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah.
You know?
One of the people that I talked to were like, they were throwing around the body of Christ. And I was like, that feels very dramatic. But it's true, they were, but, you know. And so my main point to them was like, it's not a snack, it's not a cracker, it's not grape juice, it's what we're observing in that moment.
You know,
like if Jesus were sitting in front of you, would you toss his bread around?
Writing this lesson on Wednesday was challenging. And I am very thankful that God led it in the direction that it did, because I thought that Wednesday was really great. Because I was introduced with 3 problems. Problem number 1 was that I had to do a lesson on, because it's what I scheduled, what I told the kids, and what the worship team was prepared for, and what everyone was ready for, that I was going to do a lesson, Revelation 2, 18 through 29, the Church of Thyatira. Problem number 1 was the fact that I had had a hard week. A lot of stuff had happened. I was having some struggle with my mental health. And so I had to push through that in order to write the lesson, which is something I've done before, but it's still hard for me. Problem number 2 was the fact that I was receiving as well information about the behaviors of the students and how I need to address being respectful to the church. Problem number 3 is that I have been wanting to talk about the Lord's Supper and prayer and foot washing and baptism, because I've said it before that if you look at the commands of Jesus and the way the way Jesus did his ministry, it really feels like 3 of the big things that he did. I'm not going to say a lot, because he only did the Lord's Supper once, and he only did the baptism. He only got baptized once, but he references those a lot. But there is multiple instances of foot washing in the Gospels, and so I've always had the opinion, I'm not going to let it go further than an opinion, that the foot washing needs to be held up to a higher respect than it always is. So people are like, oh, foot washing feet is gross, where in my head it's like, I have been to 2 foot washing services in my life, and to this day, those were the most emotional and powerful worship sessions I've ever had. Even more than YEC, even more than Collegiate Week, even more than D Now. Everything I've ever done in ministry, the two most powerful times of worship were foot washings.
I guess it's crazy that you say that, because for me, in my experience, I don't know if we may have talked about this before, but that was one of the most powerful experiences I ever had as a youth, was being in a church where the pastor, nobody knew what was happening. And I remember just seeing like a bucket, not a bucket, like a foot soap tub thing, and a chair, and all the lights were off except for like the one beam down the Lord's Supper table. And the pastor was like, today I want to walk, he gave the scripture that goes with it. And he sat there and waited. He just said, for anybody who would like their feet washed. And I was like, it was the most powerful thing I had seen, like, because it was a true act of service. It was at that time the scripture being played out loud. And then of course I did it with our youth long ago, and they were all stinky feet, whatever. And then they were all crying by the end of it. And then I worked for an organization served with an organization called Samaritan's Feet. And we used to go to poorer communities and wash children's feet and give them new socks and shoes. And they would do that around the world. So it is powerful. It's a service. It's humbling yourself.
So I absolutely plan on doing a foot washing eventually. I'm still thinking through when it would be appropriate, but I have some other ideas. But another very powerful thing I've experienced was the Lord's Supper. Baptism services are always very powerful for me. And so the way that I solved those three issues that I had was, instead of preaching from the verse that I was supposed to preach out of, I read the passage, and the church of Thyatira is very similar to the church of Pergamum in the fact that they were falling into idolatry and adultery and other stuff like
Corruption.
that. It was very corrupt. But the difference I noticed is that the church of Pergamum was standing up for their faith, whereas the church of Thyatira was being much more accepting of the false teaching. And so I know this probably isn't a perfect exegetical or hermeneutical way to use this verse, but I thought that this church could be a good example for what happens if we are complacent about the commands of God. Because last week, or the week before that, which I don't know, 4 weeks ago, according to when this is being released, I'm still getting used to that. At this point, a few weeks before that, we've talked about how we have sin in our life we need to repent of, and I could see that has not happened yet. And so I was able to use that and also say, hey, look, I am realizing that we talked about respecting the Lord's Supper, but I also realize I've never actually properly taught it to you guys about what it means. And so I want to apologize on my failure as a pastor from teaching you to do that and teaching you how to do that. You weren't there for that when I gave the apology part. But I apologized for...
I missed an apology?
Yeah, I was like, what? Where is Nikki? Because
well, someone told me, Justin told me we had a business meeting, so I ran out the door and then found out there was no business meeting. So.
Yeah, so I went into that, and I decided that the Lord's Supper would be a perfect way to explain how we're supposed to give reverence to God and have a true relationship with Christ, and use that about why it's important to live out your faith, and then use the Church of Thyatira as what happens if we don't. And so
cause and effect.
Yeah, and so what the cause and effect is. And so I got to walk through with the different meanings and the symbols of the Lord's Supper. What is the symbology of the bread? What's the symbolism of the grape juice? What is it collectively supposed to symbolize for us? And what happens if we stop taking these things seriously? Well, we start tolerating the lesser stuff, basically. And so that provided a very powerful time of worship and some really good discussion. I had a student reach out to me and apologize because they haven't been taking church seriously, and this made them realize they need to. And so
I feel like Wednesday night was all about that. From Let's Talk About It's the music to the lesson was about, this is your faith, it's not our faith. It's like, we will have to account for what we did here with these kids one day in heaven, but ultimately they are the ones who have to face the decisions they make. And what do you want to look like when you get to the gates?
It's almost like the way we plan our Wednesday nights is very intentional. which, by the way, that is the name of our leadership training program, Intentional.
It is intentional, but also it tends to pull itself together before we even go, all right, is this thing cohesive?
Yeah, I'm always learning and relearning the lesson that I need to stop putting so much stress into my lesson writing, because at the end of the day, not that I don't need to put effort into it, I need to put effort into it. It is my due diligence to, it is my job to do due diligence to the things of God that he calls me to do.
Right.
So that's not what I'm getting at there.
Sure.
But I will say that if I'm supposed to fully trust in God, and if by putting effort into it, God is going to use me to put it all together, then what am I doing stressing about doing it on my own?
Right.
And that's kind of the lesson that I keep having to relearn. And I'm noticing that, like, with these Wednesday nights, with these worship nights, that no matter how hard I try, something good always ends up coming from it. And I think it's because A, we have a really good support system that also is relying on the Holy Spirit, and B, at the end of the day, it's not about me,
No, it's not. It's not about any of us.
Right.
It's not even about the kids. It's about God.
Yeah. And it's really cool how everything came together on Thursday night. And to give like a bit of vulnerability here, I was getting really stressed out leading up to it, because I put a lot of energy and passion and effort into our college and young adults ministry, and still we don't have a lot of people show up to it. And I found myself getting discouraged, asking myself if I'm wasting my time. And I always end up finding out later that I am not wasting my time, because the people who do show up to it get something out of it.
Sure.
Because it was 3 people that came last night. We had a really powerful time of worship, and then I taught the lesson that I was preparing to teach, and it spoke to them. They everybody said they learned a little bit from it, and then we played Phase 10 till 9 o'clock at night, and it was a lot of fun. And it gave me hope, because one day I know that it's going to become a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm just excited to see it grow into something. So,
well, you always have to remind yourself that Jesus ministered to one woman at the well, to 12 disciples, and to large groups and masses of people. So 1, 12, 100. Ministry is ministry.
So Nikki, that's something that I've been having to learn, is that ministry really isn't about the number of people. It's just about doing the will of God and sharing the love of Christ, which, interestingly enough, as I've said, was the topic that we had last night. I did not even intend for this, but the passage that I was going to teach on was the command of Jesus, because the series we're in is called Chosen, and it's about the different aspects of Jesus' ministry. And last night it was the command that he gives to us. And I was in John 13, that says the new command, and John 13, 31 through 35 says, when he had left, Jesus said, now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified with him. If God is glorified in him, he will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you a little while longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so now I tell you, where I am going you cannot come. I give you a new command, love one another just as I have loved you. You are also to love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And I was able to talk about how that was the main command that God gave for us. But what I thought was interesting was that the night before we talked about the Lord's Supper, and I mentioned foot washing. Well, what Jesus said, the new command, was right after he washed his disciples' feet. Right. And so I use that as an opportunity to explain what the foot washing was and why that was so important. I'm not going to get into the details today, because it's just going to take a while, but in seminary I most recently learned about the history of the Israelite culture, and realizing that everything Jesus did was so important while also so radical to some people, because of the centuries and centuries of culture that led up to that moment. Like, there was this huge superstition that if we go outside of the will of God for too much, then he's going to eradicate our nation like he did before. And so now whenever Jesus is coming out and preaching a message of redemption that is different from what they understand, then everyone's suddenly afraid that Jesus is going to invoke exactly what happened once before.
Sure.
And so I talked about how...
That's because fear is a very powerful tool.
Exactly. And I talked about how fear was one of the things that ran the society back then, and that the fear of judgment is kind of what created the social structure that they had. And if a rabbi was to walk in, traditionally the rabbi would get his feet washed by the people in the room, and he'd be treated as royalty while he's there. And the fact that Jesus walks in, they call him rabbi, that he's washing their feet.
Right.
He is going outside of social norms. He's going outside of tradition. He's going outside of what is being told is right and wrong in order to truly love people and to showcase the love that God has for them. And it all tied in at the end whenever it talked about loving one another. And I talked about how God's love actually kind of works, if that makes sense. And I explained, in 1 John it says we love because God first loved us.
Right.
And it says that God is love. And so with that and with other passages, we could put it together and create this theology that God is the personification of love, or love is it is basically like the best thing to describe God as a quality. Another way to put it is the embodiment of love is God. And so the only way that we can truly love others is by having God in our lives, because he's provided the love. And I talked about how our love, we have a worldly idea of what love is.
Sure.
That's very different from what love actually is. Because biblically speaking...
Good movie.
Love Actually? Yeah.
Sorry.
I've seen that actually. It is good. Biblically speaking, love is something that you cannot give unless you have first been given it.
Right.
And the only one who can truly give it is God.
Right.
And so I talked about the creation of humanity. There's this idea I've heard people say all the time, God created human beings so that he can have fellowship with them. Okay? I don't think that's the case. Because it's the idea that God is lonely.
Oh, sure.
Right? And God's not alone. We know that God is one being but three person. And so the Father,
and
the Son...
angels. He's not alone.
The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit share fellowship with each other.
Sure.
And that they are the embodiments of love. And so what if, and again, I could use verses to back this up, but I'm just going to skip to the explanation. Creation was not a so that God can love, but creation was a because.
Yeah.
Creation was not a condition, it was the result. What if God didn't create us so that he can have something to love? What if he created us because he loves?
So the idea of spread the love.
Right. But think about it this way. If God creating us is a result of his love, and love was something he already had, and he is creating it, and his desire is to share it, his love is therefore unconditional.
Sure.
Which then explains why God's love is unconditional, because we don't have to do anything to earn his love. His love is already there.
His love is what's created us.
Right. He created us because he loves us.
Right.
He didn't create us so he can love us. And I fully believe that is exactly how the family structure should work. I fully believe that you don't have children so that you can love them. You don't have children so that you could save your marriage. Biblically speaking, your children should be an outpouring of your love for each other.
Absolutely. And
you should love your children because you love each other. And the only way you can truly love each other is by loving God.
Sure.
And so whenever the husband and the wife have an intimate relationship with Christ, they're able to have a better love for each other. And the reason they're able to have a better love is because God's love is unconditional.
Absolutely.
And when God gives his unconditional love to us, we can unconditionally love each other. So now, when a husband and wife are together and something happens, or someone gets in a fight or whatever, there's some dysfunction, the love is not on the line. Like, the love is going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
Like, you can still love each other while having a disagreement.
I would I would argue that having disagreements and conflict can actually help you grow together more.
So then, how did that apply to everything we talked about? Well, if us having children is an outpouring of God's love, if we are an outpouring of God's love by creation, then suddenly it makes absolute sense why the greatest commandment is to love God. The second greatest commandment is to love God's people. Mm-hmm. Because the first thing we need to do is love God before we can show people the love of God. Mm-hmm.
It's also important to understand if God is love, so if God equals love, what are God's attributes versus what we know love to be. And if we go back and look at how God is described, or it's not, squashmallows and hugs and rainbows. Mm-hmm. It's justice and humility and wrath at times, and kindness and patience. It's a lot of things. It's not just
because love is patient, love is kind, but love also takes no pleasure in unrighteousness. Yeah. And so here's a good way to look at it, because I've heard people say oh, well, if you truly love someone, I saw a TikTok earlier today saying if you truly love someone, you should be willing to lie to them in order to preserve their feelings. And I think that is absolutely wrong, because a couple that loves each other unconditionally has no reason to lie to each other.
And I don't know the context of that video, but I do think that sometimes the truths that we tell people aren't really truths so much as they are what we think is a truth. Mm-hmm. So if I were to go to a friend and say, I don't like that dress on you, that's my opinion. That's not a truth. Or that dress makes you look fat. That is subjective. That's not objective. And so sometimes the truths we tell are, they're not really truth. They're just how we feel about something. And so in that case, it is okay to keep your opinion to yourself.
Well, this wasn't in the concept of an opinion. It was actually talking about the gospel, because
you should never hide the gospel from your friend.
Right. And so there was the context was, whenever you're sharing the gospel with somebody, even if they are not a Christian and they don't believe, then it is an act of love. And I believe that it is, because we don't want people to go to hell. We want everyone to experience the love and the fellowship of God. Yeah. And so we share the gospel. But then the person in response said, well, if I don't believe in the gospel and the gospel hurts my feelings, then I'd want you to not share it. And the other person says, well, then to me that's lying. And what kind of love lies? Mm-hmm. And they said, well, if lying preserves their feelings, I would still lie. To which the other person said, that's not love, It's not love, and it's also not what we're called to do. And it's also what we'll be held accountable to one day. I also think too, if there's one person, if that's the one person that needed to know God and find Jesus and get saved, and then we could all the rapture would happen. Mm-hmm. Don't miss your opportunity. Oh man, I could go into that. So many different examples of that. The way that I like to think about it, if you want to talk about how love sometimes involves the hard truth and the uncomfortable stuff. Mm-hmm. If my children do something that is offensive or that is just morally wrong, mm-hmm. that requires me to have a hard conversation with them, then I'm going to have that hard conversation, even if it hurts their feelings. And the reason is not because I don't like them, or because I don't truly love them, even though I'm punishing them. The reason is because my love is not on the line for them. I'm going to love them no matter what. Sure. But I don't want them to destroy their lives. I know the dangers that comes in what they are doing. Right. And so, as a Christian, we see the danger that comes in not being saved, and that is the eternity separate from God. And out of love for God's people, which is a love for God's creation, we don't want that to be the case, and so we want to share the gospel. If I tell you that, hey, what you're doing is harmful to the ministry, if I'm talking to a leader that's hurting the ministry, it's not out of me being hateful or spiteful. It is me saying, I want this ministry to succeed, and I want you to succeed.
And we want to honor God in the end of it all.
And I think the disconnect for Christians is that we don't know how to truly communicate.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Communication, something that you and I do really well. Mm-hmm. Not in a overly confident, vain way, but we have worked on how we communicate, and communication is very important to both of us. And but even we don't always get it right, but we acknowledge it. And so I think communication is king. But to your point about, if you're children, even bringing it into what we do in this ministry is we tell the youth all the time. I told one of them the other day, like, y'all are all my kids. Y'all are the only kids I have. And so we tell them too, like, hey, that stuff you're posting on social media, we're not getting on to you to be mean or to control you. It's so that you can understand what your walk with God looks like and what it means and why it's important.
Yeah.
If I didn't love you, I would come here, do a let's talk about it, go home, and not stay here till however late we stay here, or answer the phone at 12 o'clock like I did last night. Like, again, for me, it's about the attributes, and we have to show all of the attributes of God if we're going to show love. We did have somebody this week and we were having a discussion, and they had been married to someone who, for the first time, it was God, husband, wife, and it was that true, model of what a family should be. And they were just sobbing because it was beautiful, and they felt protected, and they understood what it truly meant to be under, that model. And it was beautiful to hear and see.
Yeah. And I have to say that, like, I'm experiencing, like, although Emily and I are not married, I'm experiencing that right now, and the fact that, like, this feels like we're doing our best to follow the biblical model of God first, and then I'm the spiritual leader, and then she is the partner, the supporter, the nourisher, the foundation, because I'd say all the time, Christ is my cornerstone and she is my foundation. That's how it feels for me, at least. And the way that we're able to support each other. Right. And like, my love for Emily really does feel unconditional, and her love for me does feel unconditional. And it's because we're doing it this way. And it's the most healing relationship I've ever been in my life.
Imagine so.
And it's wonderful. So I'm not here to brag, but also praise God,
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day, to your point about, like, being the spiritual head of the household. And we're here with these kids, and a lot of them come from broken homes, which we've said before. But for some of these kids, we're the only ones who model what love looks like, what family should look like, and give them a picture of what they should look forward to in having a family. And it's important that we do that. It's important for the next generation and the next generation. And I would say that your generation are probably some of the most authentic, like, when it comes to love and marriage and trying to roll back the clock to what it's supposed to be. The idea of marriage for a long time has been very broken.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I think that unconditional love, communication, to your point earlier, you were talking about how, like, if I love you, then I'm going to share the gospel with you. And I have a friend, you can love friends too. I have a friend, and we talk about it often, and they might ask me questions, or we'll just have conversations about it, because they follow a completely different faith. I mean, they're Catholic, but I guess it is different religion, but they're Catholic. And so sometimes they have questions about why we do what we do, or what do we believe, or why we don't believe in the things they believe, and vice versa. And the fact that I'll sit there and just have a conversation with them and share what the gospel is, they don't get agitated, and they come back. And so, or as a lot of times, how often are we here? We live here. I don't know why we shouldn't have cots in the back, but they'll go, why are you always at church? Well, let me tell you about my Jesus.
Let me tell you about my Jesus. We actually kind of talked about that last week, about how, like, we've helped provide a home for these kids. And what's funny is that I was thinking for a second, how can we tie all this back into the main discussions that we wanted to have, but then in a way kind of it all did, without us trying. Because I'm thinking about, last night, the command of Jesus to show true love to the people, right? Wednesday required us to have a very hard conversation with the students, but then use that to teach what the proper way of living is. And then obviously I ended it by saying, I love you guys no matter what you do. and then one of them yelled, "I love you too." And then
I think that was one of the back boys.
One of the back boys. And then on Tuesday, obviously, you talked about, your life following God. And I remembered that, when I think about the true love of God, I'll always think about Jacob, which is the character I talked about with you. In Genesis 35, I think about that when you tell your story. The story about a man who ran from God, deceived, hurt, lied, and was deceived, was deceived, was hurt, was lied to. And at the very end of the day, at the very end of the story, he encounters his brother. His brother receives him with love, and then he goes to take his family back to Bethel, which is where he'd originally built his altar. And he says in Genesis 35, verse 3 or 4, says, "Come, let us go back to Bethel, where we will build an altar to the Lord, who has answered me on the day of my distress and has been with me wherever I have gone." And he is implying that God was with him even whenever he was hurting people. God was with him even whenever he was stealing and lying, even whenever he was getting lied to, even whenever he was sleeping with the 4 different wives that he had.
Right.
When he was living in the sin that he had, God was with him.
Right.
And that is because God's love for us is unconditional.
Right.
And that's just really powerful. And, it's like I said, I think about that when you tell your story because
that's how I tell the story. That even in my sin, I'm like, I knew God, I could feel him. And he would always send protection or people, or he gave me every opportunity. He gave me get back on track. I felt like I was playing Mario Kart, here's Rainbow Road. No, stop falling off the cliff. But yeah.
Yeah, so it was really cool how all that kind of came together, and it seems like that's always what happens throughout the weeks.
Yeah. I did appreciate you saying that, because I had never, honestly, I don't sit down and think about how do I compare my life to anything in the Bible, but I appreciated that because I had never thought of it in that manner, and so it's very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got a little teary-eyed.
I saw that. How embarrassing.
It's a goal. Who can make who cry first?
How embarrassing. But yeah, I love how at the beginning of this we were trying to figure out what we wanted to talk about, but I think it's pretty clear. You talked about today's culture and what's going on with the new generation, and I think that we have I think that we're in a time frame in a world right now that is completely devoid of true biblical love. And I don't even have to use current events as an example, because we've been seeing this forever.
Right.
The way that some of these kids are treated back at home, but it even goes further than that. I obviously, we talked about it it was something just the kids deal with, but just this past week I was talking to somebody who was sharing about how their parents treated them horribly. Right. And this person was in his 70s. So just from the beginning of time, there's just been terrible parents and people treating other people poorly, and it's
sure.
It's so obvious that we have the world has an idea of what they think love is. That love is clearly dysfunctional because it's done nothing but hurt and destroy. Because
we use the word love in so many different contexts. And so if parents I love you, but I'm beating you every single day, or I'm, a kid's being abused, and then they grow up thinking that that's love. I mean, that's a big piece of my testimony, not necessarily just my parents, but with people in my life, abuse being the thing that was encapsulated what love is, encapsulated. Anyway, so you're right. So we don't know what love is. And that's what we're trying to teach them. And because
in a way, it's also what we're trying to learn ourselves.
Absolutely. I'm still trying to learn that. That's, I think the main thing with the former generations is that they were taught to suck it up, and your childhood, and your everything that happened up until the age of 40 and 50, it's behind you, and the behavior you have does not necessarily, it is because of your conditioning, but it's not everybody else's responsibility to deal with that behavior. You need to fix it. And so you're saying my generation, your generation, and this generation, they're working through and understanding their trauma, and just not even just trauma, their experiences, why they believe what they believe, their core roots of things, and until you do that, you can't. How can you accept what God's love is, or that God is love, if all you've ever experienced is what love is not? I mean, I had that conversation with a youth just this Wednesday. Like, for the first time, I feel like I'm someone loves me for me, and I can't accept it.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to teach. How do you accept love before they can understand that it is love? It's a paradox for sure.
Yeah. It's such a, I don't know, I have a lot of thoughts about this whole thing. I feel like we could probably make this into a 5-part series where we keep talking about it. But there's a couple things I wanted to say. First of all, you know, this whole suck it up generation, or like, even whenever I was growing up, people would tell me, you know, like, oh, you're just emotional. Oh, you know,
dramatic.
Like, oh, you're just being dramatic. And on the other, it's like, I understand that people say that, but if you read the Psalms, you realize it was all emotion. Like, people were throwing their emotions to God, and they were like, now, don't get me wrong. I think that basing your beliefs and your life off of feelings and off of emotions is a bad idea.
Sure.
Do not let yourself be led by your emotion, and do not base your theology off of how you feel or what you want. That is not going to get you anywhere, because your emotions are not given to you to be a symbol of truth. God gave us our emotions to tell us a story, to be signs that point to different things in our lives.
So I heard this in a women's Bible study one time, and it was because, you know, that's a big theme in women's studies, is your emotion should be an indicator, not a dictator.
Exactly.
And I thought that's a simple way to put it. It's easy to understand.
So emotions are how God communicates with us. It is how we communicate with others. So how we communicate with ourselves. First of all, you feel joy when you're in the presence of God. You feel conviction whenever you're in sin. You feel sorrow whenever you are repenting of your sin. Right. Those are 3 emotions that God uses to lead us and to show us like what's going on. You feel anger, or you feel a sense of righteous passion whenever somebody does something wrong and you're watching the news and everything. So emotions are there, and we see Jesus have emotions. We communicate with each other based on how we feel about stuff.
Sure. Okay.
That's how we talk to people. Like like love is not a feeling, but you can tell that love is there by the way that you feel.
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then you have the way that you communicate with yourselves. Like, if your friend does something that bothers you, you don't just suck it up. You have to figure out what it is about that bothers you, so that you can stop being bothered, you know, so you can actually talk about it.
Yeah, and
right?
In therapy, we call that processing.
Yeah, and so...
And doing inventories.
I think what happened was there was this whole like, oh, you know, stop being a sissy, stop worrying so much about your feelings. There was an overcorrection where it's like, okay, well, everything is feelings now.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right? Where it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to teach to the youth group. In fact, it is my passion that I want to teach it to the church that I'm going to lead one day. I want to teach it in my couples ministry and my youth ministry about what a true healthy view of emotions are and how you can connect that with the Bible, which actually brings into what I was going to say after that. Something that I find myself having a lot of disagreements with other people about is like about the way that we joke, you know?
Sure.
And here's what I mean by that. And I feel like you know what I'm referencing right now.
I feel like we're going to bring these texts to life real quick.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to get married, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm aware that there's going to be challenges. But people of the older generation keep saying stuff along the lines of, oh, good luck, or, oh, if I had any advice I'd give you for marriage, I would say, don't. And by the
older generation, he means me and older, because I make those jokes, because I'm sarcastic. It's not, you know, out of hate.
My argument is that is actually an unhealthy way to handle and to speak to people that are preparing to get married, because I understand that a lot of marriages are bad, and I understand that people are in unhealthy marriages, that doesn't mean we should discourage everybody else from getting into them. And if someone says, oh, well, it's just a joke, you're just a joke still hurts somebody's feelings one time. It is still the reason why I know I have friends that have been discouraged from getting married because their grandfather made a joke about it.
Sure.
And also, marriage is a beautiful biblical thing that needs to be celebrated. And I just don't understand why there's humor in acting like you don't like your wife, you know?
So I'm not on the opposite side of the argument with you.
Mm-hmm.
I know sometimes when it might feel that way, but I'm really not. I think it's a generational difference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'll be completely honest, and my husband knows whatever happens, it's always like, it's public. So we were together for 7 years before we got married, and one of the reasons he would say he didn't want to get married was because his dad used to tell him
Mm-hmm.
that everything goes south after you cut the cake.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just, and it was a joke, but you know, one of my love languages is like razzing and sarcasm, and you know, it's sometimes people will be around my husband and I when we're actually like enjoying each other's company, and and they'll be like, y'all are so mean to each other. And I'm like, no. That's what we do. If I'm not mean to you, I don't care about you. And I have had to fix that because working with the kids has changed that a little bit. But
Yeah.
it's how you are the same way with your friends sometimes. You know, the boy, and but
Well, I want to make it clear that like I'm not anti-joking. Like I understand that humor is humor, because like, you know, everybody has a sense of humor. I think that like I used to wonder why some jokes I find funny, but other jokes I find offensive, while other people would be like, "Oh, you're being insensitive, you're being too sensitive." And I realize that it's because I'm seeing how some of these jokes are actually
affecting your age group,
affecting people.
Yeah.
You know, like I've had conversations with even people in my own family about how a joke that they have made was either offensive to me or to somebody else, and then their response has been, well, that's just how we joke.
Right.
Which I would say, or sometimes I wouldn't say because I don't feel like causing any issues. I would think, well, maybe the way that you joke is hurtful.
So maybe think
that?
about the audience. Like think about your audience. And to your point, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that, because I mean, you may have said it here, I feel like because you've recently been engaged and you've maybe a few times in the past mentioned not, like if we made a joke about it, but now that you're engaged and you're working towards marriage, I think it's a little bit more, it's like if you're like, I want to see red cars, and suddenly you see red cars everywhere. And so, but when you brought that up, I won't do it again, because I do respect what people, I respect people. And while it's not an excuse by any means, but you're talking about people, like I've been with my husband for 20 years. You know, the other people who are making those jokes are usually with them for 20 to 30, 60 years. And so it really just comes from a place of like, we've seen it all, we've been through it all. And y'all are in that stage of like marriage. We're walking into the beautiful thing that is marriage. And I still believe that marriage is beautiful. I still believe in marriage. I still believe in the biblical principles behind marriage. And I think a little bit of, you know, we get jaded as we get older, but I appreciate what you're saying. And so, and
I want to say in response to that, because like even before I got engaged, I'd have people tell me like, oh, you know, you don't know anything about marriage, so you don't know what you're talking about. My grandparents were married for almost 60 years, almost 50 years. I mean, they were married for a long time, and they were the people that I learned about relationships from. And they were in love and romantic all the way to the end. The last thing that my grandfather said to me was, I know that angels are real because I married one.
That's so sweet.
My grandmother would tell me stories about how even whenever he was losing his memory, they would sit and watch TV, and instead of them enjoying a movie together, she would narrate the movie to him so he could understand what's happening. And it's like you see such a raw and honest love that they have for each other, and it's so Christ and God centered that I don't consider myself like it's really weird to me whenever I will talk to older people that will say, "Oh, I've been married for so long, I'm jaded because the romance is just changes," and it's like, I'm sorry, but just from my own experience, I disagree that it's always going to be that way. Oh, well, you're not married. I understand that.
Well, it is. Your grandparents are an exception, unfortunately, to the world today, and
well, keep in mind, like, I'm not trying to talk about like the world. I'm talking about.
Well, I meant in general marriage,
right?
That relationship.
But I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of what a biblical marriage is supposed to look like,
right? And
because again, I understand that marriage is hard and that everybody's different and that it's going to be different. Some people are going to end up jaded, but I'm saying, like, if you look at I can call it the control group, which is
or science experimenting.
The science experiment. I'm talking about like the ideal biblical marriage.
Right.
The husband and the wife that are romantic with each other and that are unconditionally in love with each other and are dating each other throughout their entire relationship, and they're able to handle conflict and everything. That is what we should be aiming for, and that's what we should be teaching people to go for.
So in order for that to happen, I don't necessarily think that it's that we're not living out biblical marriage. I think that we're not taking the very first crucial step, and almost probably 90% of today's married couples are unequally yoked.
Right.
They are not. There is no. I would imagine that your grandparents, just as an example, were equally yoked. They carried what marriage looks like together evenly, allowing them both to stay at where they could still date each other, and they didn't have resentment towards the other person, or the conflict was conflict they did together. But unfortunately, in today's world, that's probably why we make jokes about it so much, is so many couples are unequally yoked. My husband and I are unequally yoked. I mean, we love each other, but one or the other of us get tired sometimes because we're not carrying the load evenly in our relationship, whatever. So I think that's really the if we would teach people what being equally yoked means, and I had a friend who always thought that meant yolked.
Yeah.
Like an egg yolk.
Yeah. And I want to say that, like, I'm not trying to sound like a naive kid or something, because I don't want people to respond and be like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
I actually think I've never thought it was naive. I think it is the ideal, and I think it's hard to go from reality to ideal very quickly. Well, but I appreciate your opinion on it.
Oh, hear me out.
I'm hearing you.
I'm aware of what the reality is, and I'm aware of what God designs for us. Whenever I make the argument about, hey, maybe we should stop making negative jokes about these things, is because I'm asking myself, if our point A is the reality, which is the negativity that some people have, the unequally yokedness, and the ideal is what we want to minister people to get to, then I would argue that we want to remove things that we have the power to remove, and also acknowledge the stuff that is harming us from getting to that ideal. For example, I'm preparing to get married. I'm very excited about it. And people that I know love me and that support my marriage will say with one hand, I love you and support your marriage, but on the other hand say, oh, wait till she gets crazy. And it's like, it feels like, I understand that there's a joke behind there, but it almost feels paradoxical, like it will unintentionally, because this is just what humor does, it unintentionally adds negative emotion to it. It unintentionally adds thoughts in your head, because what's going to happen is I can say that to somebody else, oh, wait till she gets crazy, and then 10 years down the line they'll get into a fight and someone will say, well, he did say she would get crazy, and it's like, that's not what I'm trying to do.
Prophetic.
Like, that's what humor does, and that's why I think we should be a lot more careful about, and this is not being me being woke or a snowflake, like, we need to be careful.
I was just about to call you a snowflake.
Like, we need to be careful about that kind of stuff, because it can harm people and it can harm relationships.
But something that sometimes when you bring like this topic up, I mean, one of the main things that I try to teach people is, and I say this all the time, like, there's 50% truth in every joke. Just because you're laughing, it doesn't make it not harmful. Even if someone, because a joke in that reference is to make everybody else in the room laugh, not the person it's aimed at. And I guess sometimes somebody holds a mirror up in front of you. You do that for me a lot, especially in this topic. I mean, I have the same opinions that you have about biblical marriage. I just come from a generation where we didn't get it right.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time that the way you look at marriage to me is beautiful, because you just don't see it. Especially, well, I'll just say the way that I know Emily, I know you, the way y'all are approaching, the way y'all are communicating, it really is a model of what I hope these young ones look towards.
And I have to say that I am incredibly thankful and blessed to have her in my life, because I feel like I can truly and properly minister to the next generation about how to do this life, how to do family relationships and everything correctly, because I have somebody by my side that is sharing in that with me. And one of the ways I wanted to say about how, like, to get a good view of what biblical marriage looks like, and by the way, I think it's funny because in January we're going to do an entire series on this.
Yeah.
And I still need to talk to you about the plans I have for that, because I want to do things slightly differently when we go through that. But anyways, in Ephesians chapter 5, when it talks about the structure of the family, it's something that people have used all the time to argue for and against every opinion they've had about marriage. There is one aspect of that passage that everybody seems to ignore. Okay?
Are you ready?
I'm about to read this out. If it hurts people's feelings, then go find another podcast. Okay. Ephesians 5:22 through 33. This is going to be a bit of a mouthful, but it says, "Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church.
Sure.
He is the Savior of the body. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives are to submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, to make her holy, cleansing her with the washing of water by the word. He did this to present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or anything like that, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands are to love their wives as their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hates his flesh, but provides and cares for it, just as Christ does for the church, since we are members of this body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." And this is the part of the passage that I feel like everyone leaves out in the conversation. So when Paul writes, everything he says is based off of everything he has once said. He writes in phrases, he writes in full paragraphs, and he uses words to paint a massive picture to make one point. So the verse that he's about to say is supposed to wrap up everything that he has said about family. Okay?
Yep. So,
verse 32, it says, "This mystery is profound, but I am actually talking about Christ and his church. To sum up, each one of you is to love his wife as himself, and the wife is to respect her husband." So, what he is saying...
I have talked about this many times with kids and even with adults.
So, that verse at the end is showing that he is using the model of a wife and a husband to symbolize the relationship that Jesus has with his church.
Yep.
And that we are supposed to take the positions that these figures have.
Yeah.
So when it's saying that the man is to be like Christ, it's not saying that I have to be this domineering, all-powerful Lord of the church, which would be my wife. What it's saying is that I have to be self-sacrificial. Sure. I have to wash her feet like Christ washed the feet of his people. I have to be willing to carry my cross for her. I have to be willing, in the same way that Christ loves me no matter what I do, I need to love her no matter what. In the same way that Christ would never say anything negative about me, I need to never say anything negative about her. And the way that the church must submit to Christ, not in a way of Christ controls us like he's our puppet, but instead, like it's encouraged that the church follows Christ out of love for him.
Right.
That the church is respectful of Christ's command out of love for him. That it's saying that the wife is to love her husband in a way that is respectful of his desires, and the husband will be respectful of her desires, and they are to have an equal love and respect for each other in a way that shows the yin and yang relationship that the church has with Christ. the church must be self-sacrificial towards Christ because Christ is self-sacrificial towards us. I have seen in so many examples that whenever a person is properly loved, they can properly love back.
Right.
Whenever I've heard testimonies from women that have said that whenever they got into a proper relationship and the man was showing true love, it was easier for them to act like themselves. And I've seen the same thing from men saying it's easier for them to act like a man when their wife is loving them properly.
Well, sure, because roles get reversed. And so you have a lot of women who are trying to express masculine like that masculine side of them, why they can't be feminine. If a woman can't be feminine, then she can't be what she's supposed to be in the marriage. And I also think, I probably say that a lot. Like, I think I was just talking with Emily yesterday, and I was like, because marriage is the model of the church and Jesus. And but to the point of, it says in the scripture, like, a man should love his wife as he loves himself. This is always a point that I talk about when we talk about that scripture. Most people don't love themselves the way Christ loves them. They don't know. That goes all the way back to our first conversation. Like, if God is love.
I actually want to wrap that into like the beginning of like when I taught yesterday, that we are able to love because of God's love for us, and that God's love for us originated in his fellowship that he has with himself, his love that he has for himself. And so Christ loves us because he, as part of the triune Godhead, is love and therefore receives love from himself. We as men are supposed to love ourselves. Women are supposed to love themselves so that we can properly share love together, therefore making your love unconditional. And when you have children, then you're able to raise them up in instruction. And that's why verse 6, chapter 6 opens up talking about children in a way that is powerful, in a way that makes sense. It says, with everything that's said in mind, children, obey your parents because that is what's right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment, so that it may go well with you, that you may live a long life in the land. So assuming that your parents are unconditionally loving each other and showing you unconditional love, then it makes no sense for you to be hateful towards them and to talk negatively about them.
Sure.
But also, if you come from a bad home life, it is really hard for you to replicate for your children what the Bible is telling you to do if all you have in your heart is hatred for your parents.
Right.
Which is difficult. And then at the end, there's the reciprocity, whatever.
Reciprocity?
The reciprocity, where it says, now, fathers, do not stir up anger in your children, but bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. We have worried so much about political correctness, about feminism versus masculinity, about all these different things, that we forget that at the end of the day, our job as Christians is not to worry about hurting people's feelings. Our job as Christians is to replicate the church and to replicate the love that God has. You know, and so it's like it says, each one of you is to love his wife as himself, and the wife is to respect and love her husband. It's not calling I think it's interesting that the demand is that the husband loves the wife. You know, like I've had someone say, I was in class a few months ago, and my professor was like, because I'm in seminary right now, the professor asks, okay, so we know that the wife is supposed to submit to her husband because everyone wants to talk about that. What does it tell the husband to do? Right. And the guys start raising their hand, and one of them goes, to die for his wife? No. What else? To submit to, no. To respect the wife? No. Guys, what does it tell us to do? It tells the men to love their wives. And all of that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, is the loss of love in the world has ultimately resulted in unhealthy marriages, negative feedback, negative talk about each other's families, and this idea that the family is outdated because we just don't know how to do it right anymore. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, coming from a different generation, I think if your generation can help the next generation, I don't want to say that my generation and the generation before me is like a lost cause, but it is hard to retrain and recondition something But I do think that your generation teaching this generation, and I pray, it's a great prayer of mine that these kids and the kids after them, they do look at marriage biblically, and we do see family the way it's supposed to be, and because it's only going to echo and have a ripple effect in society, in sin, in schools, in how we treat each other. And that's ultimately what we need. We're not kind to each other because there's no kindness in the home. There's sometimes no kindness in the church. There's no patience. There's no gentleness. It is just sometimes just all harshness.
Yeah.
And so if we can teach that and teach them how to love God and that God is love and that it's unconditional, then perhaps maybe this world can change a little.
I think that's a really high note for us to end on. Before we do that, I did want to add one last thing, and then we could talk about the outro. I have been writing my vows, and I'm working on what I want to say. And ever since there was a conversation that Emily and I had early in our relationship, that I've decided to add that to my vows, and she already knows about this. But in my vows, I want to make a vow and a promise that I will do the best that I can to biblically love her as Christ loved us, and to build a home that kids are not afraid to come home to.
That's important.
I want to build a home that other kids actually want to come to because they feel safe there. I don't want to have children. I don't want to have my children go someplace to avoid being at home.
Yeah.
I want their home to be the place they go to avoid everything else, because that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And so
we've already built a model of that here with our own youth group. This is home to them.
Yeah.
We actually asked them that the other day, I think. What is this? If I say the word church, what does it mean to you? Like, give me one word. And a couple
Abby.
of them went home. Yeah, they were like home. Oh, someone said Abby. It was weird. That was strange. But I think it was Isabella who said home. And I thought that's such a beautiful way to think of, but what if home was home?
Yeah.
And church was church,
I mean, the church must be an extension of the home,
Sure.
So, we can get to that. But anyways, so that was our main discussion for the day.
That's nice. I think we were supposed to talk about how to be Christians in the world today.
I think that kind of worked, though.
Yeah, we just start with love.
I mean, that's all that God's two commands: love God and love others.
Yeah.
Using the love that we've talked about. So as far as the sock check today, I'm wearing the SpongeBob's. I don't know if y'all can see that, but I'm wearing my SpongeBob socks today.
Was there our advice for the day?
Well, I mean, yeah, but I guess we could go through announcements. At this point, the po' boy sale should have already happened.
And we made so much money.
I have no idea how much we made. But we can probably put it in the description, or I don't know if we want to put it a number right here. Yeah. Nikki, when you edit this, can you put a number right here?
Wow.
This is how much we made. Amen. Praise God. This was awesome. In 2 real world weeks, we'll actually know how it went.
I have hand numbered 1,150 tickets, so
that's fantastic. As far as announcements are concerned, YEC is coming up, and I don't know if by now we will have ordered the shirts, but the shirts are going to be ordered soon. We have most of the money has been paid at this point, by the point of this being recorded, because the money, according to the day this is going to be released, the money is due in 5 days. So guys, y'all got to get on with that, because this is coming soon. That's in 3 weeks in real time.
Or if you're watching this past that, too late.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. But yeah, I don't think we have much else. Everything is kind of culminating in YEC this year.
Yeah.
And then
we'll have a Christmas play. We'll start working on the Christmas play in a few weeks.
The Christmas play. We have Disciple You. We're
going to have a gift wrapping fundraiser through the holidays.
We have Disciple You in March. We have Team, which is our youth mission trip happening in April.
And then we're back to here.
Intentional.
And then we have a garage sale.
Yeah, a garage sale in May.
VBS in
my
July.
Wedding in June.
Oh yeah, June the wedding.
June is the wedding.
July VBS, and then we'll end up right back where we are right now.
Do you want to do? I've been wanting to ask. Do you think we should go by seasons? Season 1. This is season 1. The next week we do season 2. Or do you want
season 1, episode 1? Sure.
This is season 1, episode 4.
Yes, season 1, episode 4.
Okay. Well. Anyways, I guess we got to wrap up. So I want to keep a tradition right now. We're going to have the words of wisdom. Nikki, what kind of wisdom do you have?
As always, love Jesus and make good choices.
Don't be like beavers. Wood is not edible. So anyways, that was the podcast. See you guys later.
Bye, guys.